And this, my esteemed students, I announced with a smirk that stretched all four corners of my mouth, is what the humans call their finest achievement in space warfare. The holoscreen behind me displayed a crude Earth vessel, its blocky design an insult to the elegant curves of proper Zaxian engineering. Notice the primitive kinetic weaponry? They still believe throwing metal at high velocity is the peak of combat innovation. My name is Commander Vex Thor of the 7th Zaxian Fleet Academy, and I've spent the last 30 cycles teaching advanced space combat theory to the brightest minds in the Galactic Alliance. Today's lesson? How not to wage war in space, courtesy of our newest associates. The classroom erupted in synchronized laughter, their tertiary eyes blinking in amusement. These younglings, barely into their second metamorphosis, understood what most of the Galactic Alliance had already concluded: humans were a joke in the cosmic arena. Commander called out Cadet Naira, her crystalline exoskeleton gleaming under the Academy's quantum lights. Is it true they still use actual beings to pilot their ships? Not even basic quantum AI. Oh, it gets better. I projected another image, this one showing a human pilot strapped into what they called a cockpit. They insist on manual control. Can you believe it? While we execute perfect battle formations through distributed consciousness networks, they rely on what do they call it? Ah, yes, gut instinct. More laughter. More eye blinking. More validation of our superiority. I switched to the next slide, showing their planetary defense network. Observe their scattered approach to system defense. No quantum entanglement fields, no temporal distortion barriers. They protect their worlds with satellites. Actual physical objects floating in space. One well-placed gravity pulse, and their entire network would collapse faster than a dying star. The amusement in the room was palpable, like a thick fog of superiority. I basked in it, remembering my own academy days when I first learned about these peculiar beings who'd somehow stumbled their way into faster-than-light travel. But surely, interrupted Cadet Klex, his thought patterns radiating genuine confusion. They must have some redeeming qualities? The Council wouldn't have admitted them into the Alliance otherwise. I waved all three of my primary appendages dismissively. Politics, young one. Pure politics. They have resources we want. We have technology they need. A simple trade agreement blown out of proportion by bureaucrats who wouldn't know a phase cannon from a food synthesizer. The holoscreen shifted to display human military formations. Look at these battle patterns. Linear thinking in a three-dimensional space. No consideration for quantum possibilities or probability manipulation. They fight like they're still confined to planetary surfaces. As I prepared to move on to the next portion of my lecture, a subtle vibration rippled through my communication implant. A priority message? During class? How irregular. The message that interrupted my class. Oh, how I wish I could erase it from my memory banks. It was the beginning of our greatest embarrassment, though we were too blind to see it then. Commander Vex Thor, the message pulsed urgently through my neural interface. Report to the Grand Strategy Chamber immediately. Human vessels detected in the Proxima sector. I dismissed my class with a casual wave, certain I would return to continue mocking human inadequacies. After all, what threat could they possibly pose? Our quantum sensors had detected 3 of their crewed ships limping through space near our outpost. Probably lost, I thought. Or maybe their primitive navigation systems had malfunctioned. The Grand Strategy Chamber buzzed with activity when I arrived. Admiral Kylax stood at the center, his bioluminescent patterns flashing with annoyance. Ah, Commander. Perhaps you can explain why 3 human vessels are approaching our most sensitive research facility. Most likely a navigational error, Admiral. Their technology, as I trailed off as new data flooded the quantum displays. That cannot be correct. The human ships were moving in patterns that defied our combat algorithms. Instead of maintaining proper formation, they spun and tumbled through space like damaged debris. Our targeting systems couldn't establish lock. The movements were too random, too chaotic. Are their systems malfunctioning? Someone asked. Then we heard it. A transmission, broadcast on all frequencies, in a voice that made my primary heart stop. A child's voice. This is Madison Reynolds, age 12 3/4, requesting permission to demonstrate our new combat system. The chamber erupted in laughter. A human child? Playing with military vessels? This had to be some sort of joke. Admiral Kylax's response dripped with condescension. Little human, this is a restricted military zone. Return to your video games and... The rest of his sentence vanished in a blast of static as our quantum communication network crashed. Not just crashed, it had been corrupted with gaming software. Our most sophisticated military systems were being flooded with something called Ultra Mega Space Battles 5000. Sorry about that, Madison's voice chirped through backup channels. I needed to level the playing field. You see, I figured out that your fancy quantum systems are super vulnerable to good old-fashioned computer viruses, especially ones designed by kids who spend way too much time hacking MMORPGs. Before we could process this absurdity, the human ships launched their attack. But instead of proper military tactics, they moved like characters in those primitive entertainment simulations humans called video games. They barrel-rolled through our defense grid, pulling maneuvers that should have torn their ships apart. Our automated defense systems, programmed for logical combat patterns, couldn't track them. The humans were breaking every rule of space combat we'd established over millennia. And leading this chaos? A 12-year-old girl who treated interstellar warfare like her personal playground. You guys take this way too seriously, Madison's voice echoed through our systems. War isn't about perfect formations and mathematical probabilities. Sometimes you just need to button mash and hope for the best. In less than 20 minutes, our outpost's defenses were completely neutralized. Not a single shot had been fired. Our own automated systems had done most of the damage, trying to hit targets that moved like drunken asteroids through space. The final insult? Madison sent us a scoreboard, ranking our performance against her previous high scores. We had been defeated, not by their military, not by their advanced technology, but by a human child who approached space combat with the logic of a game. The Galactic Alliance Council demanded answers. How had a human child breached our defenses? More importantly, why were they letting her explain it to us? Yet there she stood, in the grand hall of the Zaxian Military Academy, practically bouncing with excitement as she prepared her presentation. Okay, so first off, Madison Reynolds announced, her hair tied in what humans call pigtails. Your entire approach to space combat is super boring. No offense. Admiral Kyle Axe's bioluminescent patterns flashed in outrage. Our combat doctrine has been perfected over 12,000 years. Yeah, that's kind of the problem. Madison pulled out what appeared to be a gaming console. You guys got stuck in a rut. Watch this. The holographic display sprang to life, showing a virtual battlefield. But instead of proper military formations, it displayed what looked like pure chaos. Ships spinning, rolling, using debris as cover, even playing what appeared to be a game of tag with enemy vessels. See, I created this training program by combining every space combat video game ever made, Madison explained, her fingers flying over the controls. Then I added physics engines from the latest VR systems, mixed in some MMO raid mechanics, and topped it off with good old-fashioned button-mashing unpredictability. The room fell silent as we watched virtual ships performing maneuvers that violated every principle of proper space combat. They used gravity wells as slingshots, treated asteroid fields like obstacle courses, and somehow turned their own engine exhaust into makeshift weapons. But there's no logic to these movements, I protested, my tertiary eyes twitching in distress. How can you predict battle outcomes without proper quantum probability calculations? Madison rolled her eyes. That's your second problem. You try to calculate everything. Sometimes you gotta just go with the flow. Like this, she demonstrated a maneuver that made several senior officers nauseous. I call this one the super ultra reverse triple coffee spin. Coffee, Admiral Kyle Axe questioned. Yeah, 'cause I invented it at 3 a.m. while hopped up on hot chocolate, since Mom says I'm not allowed real coffee yet. The next hour was a crash course in what Madison called gaming the system. She showed us how human teenagers could outmaneuver our best pilots simply by treating warfare like an elaborate video game. Their training programs didn't rely on complex quantum calculations or rigid battle doctrines. Instead, they learned through virtual reality simulations that encourage creativity, split-second decisions, and completely insane tactical choices. The best part, Madison grinned, showing off what I learned was called braces on her teeth. We're using your own technology against you. All those quantum sensors and automated defense systems. They're basically aimbots and wall hacks. Any decent gamer knows how to counter those. The horror slowly dawned on us. Humans weren't advancing their military technology in the traditional sense. Instead, they were turning our own sophisticated systems into tools for their chaotic style of combat. And leading this revolution. Children. Children who approached space warfare with the same enthusiasm they brought to their digital entertainment. Oh, and check this out, Madison activated what she called her streaming setup. Suddenly, we were watching dozens of human children, all playing her combat simulation game, all learning to fight in ways that defied our tactical databases. We've got over 1 million players now, she beamed. Every time they play, the AI learns new techniques. It's like crowdsourcing battle tactics, except everyone thinks they're just playing the hottest new space combat game. Admiral Kyle Axe's patterns had faded to a sickly pale blue. You're saying your entire species is unknowingly training for war through entertainment? Well, duh. Why do you think we made space combat look exactly like our video games? The muscle memory kicks in automatically, Madison demonstrated by closing her eyes and perfectly executing a series of impossible maneuvers. I can do this in my sleep. Literally. I sleepwalk sometimes and Mom says I air pilot through the house. The implications were staggering. While we had spent millennia perfecting the art of proper space combat, humans had turned warfare into a game. Their pilots didn't need years of training in quantum physics or probability mathematics. They just needed good reflexes, creativity, and a willingness to try the stupidest possible solution to any given problem. Want to know the really scary part? Madison asked, her grin turning mischievous. This is just version 1.0. Wait until you see what happens when we add multiplayer raid mechanics and rocket jumping. I didn't know what rocket jumping meant, but judging by the gleam in her eyes, I didn't want to find out. The Galactic Alliance had grossly underestimated humanity's capacity for turning serious matters into entertainment. And now we were paying the price. The Battle of Neptune's rings began like a bad joke. Our fleet, 5,000 ships strong, faced off against a mere 300 human vessels. The battlefield, the sprawling ice rings of their solar system's 8th planet. Victory should have been assured. Should have been. Admiral, my voice wavered as I reported from the tactical station. The humans are. They're splitting into what they call raid groups. Admiral Kyle Axe's bioluminescent patterns flickered with confusion. Raid groups? What nonsense is this? Before I could explain, Madison's voice crackled through our command channel. Hey guys, ready for a boss fight? The human ships had arranged themselves into small squadrons of varying sizes. Some groups of 10, others of 25, each led by what they called a raid leader. The formations made no tactical sense until they started moving. Group A, start the pull, a human commander ordered. Groups B and C, get ready for the ad phase. Healers, stay back and watch your mana. What followed was pure chaos. The human squadrons moved like swarms of angry insects, each with distinct roles that seemed to follow some incomprehensible gaming logic. Their smaller ships, which they called DPS, darted through our formations with suicidal speed. Larger vessels, designated as tanks, absorbed our fire while drawing our ships into deadly traps. Warning, our tactical AI blared. Unknown energy signatures detected. Those would be the healers, human ships equipped with experimental technology that could actually repair battle damage in real time. They called it health regen and shield buffs. We called it impossible. Admiral, I watched in horror as our neat battle lines dissolved into disarray. They're using Neptune's rings as cover. Our targeting systems can't distinguish between ice fragments and their ships. Of course not, Madison's voice chimed in. That's called using environmental mechanics. Basic game design. Our fleet's traditional approach was falling apart. The humans weren't just fighting, they were playing. Their ships performed maneuvers with names that made me question their sanity: the Leroy Jenkins Special Kite and Spike 360 no-scope drive-by. Time for Phase 2, Madison announced cheerfully, initiating what I call the pizza roll maneuver. I watched in disbelief as human ships began using our own fleet as cover, weaving between our vessels with precision that shouldn't have been possible. Our automated targeting systems, confused by their proximity, started registering friendly fire incidents. Turn off the automation, Admiral Kyle Axe commanded. Switch to manual control. That was exactly what they wanted. The moment we disabled our automated systems, the humans launched what they called their ultimate combo, ships moving in synchronized patterns, like some demented dance routine. They had practiced this, I realized. Practiced it in games until it became muscle memory. Keep them grouped up, a human commander called out. Setting up for the AOE. AOEA, I would later learn, stood for area of effect in this case. It meant dozens of human ships releasing clouds of metallic particles into space, transforming Neptune's rings into a giant electromagnetic disruption field. Our quantum communications went dark. Boom, Madison's voice somehow still came through. That's what we call a crowd control combo. Now for the fun part. The fun part involved human ships using the planet's magnetic field to slingshot themselves at impossible speeds. They called it sequence breaking and speed running strats. We called it a nightmare. Our formations broke. Disciplined battle groups devolved into individual ships trying to survive. What humans called bullet hell patterns, the ice rings, became a graveyard of disabled vessels, our own technology turned against us by children who treated warfare like a game. Admiral, I reported, my patterns pulsing with distress. We're losing ships to something they call spawn camping. Indeed, human vessels had positioned themselves near our fleet's designated rally points, picking off reinforcements the moment they arrived. A tactic apparently borrowed from something called PvP servers. Almost got the achievement. Madison's voice sang out. Who wants to try for a speedrun record? The next few minutes were a blur of human ships performing what they called trick shots and combo moves. They used our own ships as jumping points, redirected our weapon fire with precisely placed debris, and somehow turned Neptune's atmospheric storms into makeshift propulsion systems. Final phase, the call went out across human channels. Time for the boss's loot drop. That loot drop turned out to be our own command ship, disabled by a maneuver that Madison proudly called the streaming special. Named, she explained, because it looked cool on camera. Apparently, the entire battle was being broadcast live to millions of human viewers, complete with commentary and something called subscriber alerts. GG is, the human channels erupted with incomprehensible gamer speak as our fleet surrendered. Pog moment, clip that. In less than 2 hours, the most advanced fleet in the Galactic Alliance had been defeated by humans using tactics from video games. The Battle of Neptune's Rings would go down in history, not as a military engagement, but as what humans called a pro-gamer move. Thanks for the practice run. Madison's final message came through as their ships formed up for victory screenshots. This is going to make such a great YouTube video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I stood on our broken bridge, watching human ships perform victory dances in space, literal choreographed movements they called emotes, and realized that warfare would never be the same. The age of proper military doctrine was over. The era of the gamer had begun. 3 months after the Battle of Neptune's Rings, I found myself standing in what humans called a gaming center, watching cadets from our most prestigious military academy playing something called Fortnite. The Galactic Alliance Military Command had made an unprecedented decision. If we couldn't beat them, we'd join them. And so here I was, Commander Vex Thor, decorated veteran of a dozen campaigns, learning about quick scoping from a teenager with purple hair. No, Professor V. Madison Reynolds, now officially our Strategic Innovation Advisor, corrected my grip on the gaming controller. You're thinking too logically again. Sometimes you just gotta yeet yourself into the situation. Yet I muttered, adding another incomprehensible human term to my growing vocabulary. My secondary appendages twitched as I tried to master this strange device. But the trajectory calculations. Stop calculating. Madison threw her hands up in exasperation. That's why you guys keep losing. Here, watch this. She took the controller and proceeded to demonstrate something called a 360 no-scope triple kill, which violated at least 7 laws of physics and all known military doctrine. The worst part? It worked. The changes in our military training were dramatic. Traditional quantum combat simulators were replaced with what Madison called sick gaming rigs. Our perfectly calculated battle formations gave way to something humans called rush strats and cheese tactics. Today's lesson, Madison announced to a room full of alien officers, their bioluminescent patterns glowing with confusion, is about thinking outside the box. And sometimes throwing the box into a star, because boxes are for noobs. Admiral Kyle Axe, who had swallowed his pride after Neptune, raised a primary appendage. But what about our 12,000 years of tactical doctrine? Great question. Madison spun in her chair, and action she claimed helped her think better. We're not throwing it all away. We're just adding some spice. Like your quantum targeting? Super cool. But have you tried quick scoping with it? The integration of human gaming concepts with our advanced technology produced interesting results. Our quantum-entangled communication networks now came with something called party chat battle formations included positions for DPS support. And something called that one guy who always runs in first. The key, Madison explained while demolishing an entire squadron of training drones with impossible maneuvers, is unpredictability. Your enemies can't predict what you're going to do if even you don't know what you're going to do. This philosophy, while completely insane, proved devastatingly effective. Our first combat exercise using the new hybrid doctrine left the evaluation committee speechless, especially when a squadron of our ships executed something Madison called a pro-gamer move, using a quantum slipstream as a makeshift half-pipe. Congratulations, Madison beamed at the shocked pilots. You just invented the quantum kickflip. That's definitely going in the next patch notes. The most surprising change came in our recruitment practices. Suddenly, we found ourselves scouting gaming tournaments alongside traditional military academies. Our psychological evaluations now included questions like, how do you feel about spawn camping? And rate your rage quit tendency on a scale of 1 to 10. Remember, Madison addressed a class of new recruits. The enemy's quantum probability computer can't predict your moves if you're running on pure caffeine and questionable decisions. Even our ship designs underwent radical transformations. Traditional sleek, efficient vessels were modified with what humans called cosmetic upgrades and sick paint jobs. Madison insisted that looking cool improved performance by at least 60%. When we pointed out this made no scientific sense, she just replied, "That's what makes it work." But where's the logic, I asked her one day, watching our newest pilots perform maneuvers that made my tertiary eyes water. Madison looked up from her gaming console, her braces glinting in the starlight. "Professor V, you guys spent 12,000 years learning to fight wars. We spent that time learning to have fun. And you know what we discovered? Having fun makes you really, really good at breaking things." She wasn't wrong. Our combat effectiveness had increased by 300% since implementing what Madison called Gamer Strats 101. Even our most traditional commanders had to admit that adding a 360 spin to a quantum jump somehow made it harder to track. The best part, Madison grinned as she watched a formation of ships practice something called no-clip jumping. Everyone thought humans would have to adapt to space combat. Instead, we made space combat adapt to us. And so, the greatest military force in the galaxy learned to embrace chaos. Our tactical meetings now included terms like spawning and camping. Our battle cries changed from noble declarations to something called trash talk. And our after-action reports had to include a section for highlight real moments. The universe, it seemed, wasn't ready for the combination of quantum physics and quick-time events. But as I watched our forces master this new form of combat, I realized something profound. The humans hadn't just changed how we fought, they'd changed how we thought. And somehow, that made us better. A year after the Battle of Neptune's Rings, our newly reformed fleet faced its greatest challenge. The Drachnid swarm, a species that had never signed the Galactic Alliance treaties, launched a massive invasion of Alliance space. They believed our recent changes had weakened us. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. "Welcome to the final boss battle," Madison's voice rang through our quantum-enhanced party chat. Now 13, she had added gold stars to her braces and insisted they improved her strategic thinking by 40%. Everyone remember their raid positions. Our combined human-alien fleet hung in space near the Arcturus sector. Behind us, 36 worlds waited to see if our new doctrine would prove itself against a genuine threat. The Drachnid fleet approached in perfect, predictable formation. Just the way we liked them. "Remember your training?" I called out to my squadron. Just like in practice, but this time with better graphics. The Drachnid commander's transmission dripped with contempt. "Your fleet appears to be malfunctioning. Your formations are chaotic." "Oh man," Madison giggled. "They're gonna rage quit so hard." Execute Operation Pizza Roll Supreme. What followed would be recorded in military history as the most epic gamer moment in space combat. Our fleet, trained in both quantum mechanics and spawn camping, unleashed what Madison called a combo move for the highlight reel. Quantum-enhanced fighters performed perfect rocket jumps off capital ships. Battlecruisers used gravity wells for trick shots that curved around planets. Support vessels deployed shield buffs and health regen while spamming GGEs in all communication channels. "They're splitting their fleet," a sensor operator reported. "They're trying to flank us." "Classic noob move," Madison responded. "Time for the surprise mechanic. Deploy the Twitch Chat Special. The Twitch Chat Special involved 300 ships simultaneously executing a maneuver that violated 17 laws of physics. The Drachnid targeting computers crashed, trying to calculate the impossibility of what they were seeing. "Their shields are down," Captain Rivera announced. Deploying the POG maneuver. The POG maneuver, I had learned, stood for pretty obviously great. It involved using our quantum slipstream drives to create what looked like a giant smiling face in space, complete with winking eye. The fact that this formation also created a devastating electromagnetic pulse was, according to Madison, just good game design. "Quantum dab on their battleship," Madison commanded, her voice filled with glee. "No-scope them back to their spawn point." The Drachnid fleet, faced with tactics their strategic AI couldn't comprehend, began to retreat. But retreating from gamers, as we had learned, was like running from a spawn camper. You were just doing exactly what they wanted. "You guys forgot the most important rule of gaming," Madison broadcast on all frequencies. "Never rage quit before the end credits." Our fleet split into what humans called speed running groups, each competing to disable as many enemy ships as possible. The scoring system, displayed on everyone's heads-up display, awarded extra points for style and deducted them for being too sweaty. The Drachnid commander made one final transmission. "This isn't how war is supposed to be fought." "War," Madison replied. "This isn't war. This is just a really expensive esports tournament." In less than 40 minutes, the largest Drachnid fleet ever assembled had been reduced to floating space debris and rage quit messages. Our casualties? Minimal. Our style points? Maximum. The victory celebration that followed defied description. Alien officers performed human victory dances while their ships drew memes in space using quantum exhaust trails. The Galactic Alliance Council, watching via livestream, had to admit that maybe, just maybe, the humans had been right all along. Madison, now officially promoted to Grand Strategic Memlord, a title she insisted on, addressed the combined fleet. "See? This is what happens when you stop taking everything so seriously. Now, who wants to try for a speed run record on the victory lap?" Looking back now, as I record this for the Academy's archives, I can't help but laugh at how wrong we were. We thought humans were primitive because they approached space combat like a game. In reality, they were advanced because of it. They taught us that victory doesn't belong to the most disciplined or the most technologically advanced. It belongs to those who can adapt, improvise, and most importantly, have fun while doing it. "Hey," Professor V. Madison pokes her head into my office as I finish this recording. She's 14 now, and somehow convinced the council to approve neon pink quantum drives because they look cooler in screenshots. "Are you still working on that boring history stuff? Come on, we're about to test the new build. I added microtransactions to the quantum torpedoes." And so I go, this decorated commander of the Galactic Alliance, to play video games with my students. Because that's how we fight wars now. That's how we train our pilots. That's how a species we once mocked as primitive completely revolutionized space combat. They laughed at our beginnings until a human child rewrote the rules. And you know what? The new rules are much more fun. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to practice my quick scoping. I hear the next patch is going to be lit.